on in. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for inviting me to come here tonight to tell you about the Library Telescope program. It's a really great project for clubs like yourselves to get involved with. And I got involved with the program in 2019 and placed my first telescope at the Silver Lake Library. And now KAO supports 26 telescopes at 14 different library locations in Kansas. And so I'm really glad your club is looking forward to or wanting to support this project. So I hope you guys you get into it. Well, in the images that you see here, they are the first 11 telescopes that were in the Wichita Library Telescope program. And what happened there is that mere 3 months later, their program was so popular that they had to get 5 more telescopes for their program. So they have been thinking about, the Wichita Library had been thinking about getting some telescopes, and getting into the Library Telescope program for quite a while, but they just never really got, had the momentum to go ahead and do it. Well, I was invited as a guest speaker, a virtual guest speaker, just by coincidence, and during my presentation, I went ahead and talked a little bit about the Library Telescope program, and the very next day they called me up and says, where can I find some of these telescopes? How do I get into this program? Tell me how to buy them. So I showed them how to do this. I shared with them how to do this. And so they contacted a person who was a donor and got some money, got a grant money for it. And so a lot of telescopes, they pay for their own telescopes. And so she got this grant money to buy 11 telescopes, and with the option to buy more. And so with that, they went ahead and bought these telescopes, and when they received them, then I made an appointment with them, and then we modified them. And in this image, you can see how they're all modified. They've got a little, fanny packs on there, and there's some goodies in there, and you can see there's little strings on them, and everything is tethered so nothing gets lost. Anyway, their telescope program is so popular right now. The last time I looked was just yesterday. They've got 118 people waiting on the waiting list to check one out. 118, right. Anyway, the program standard telescope, it starts with either an Orion 4.5-inch telescope, which is this one here, and it comes with a different eyepiece. I have a Celestron zoom eyepiece on here, or a Zoomo telescope. This is a 114 telescope. They're essentially the same telescope. The only difference is this one's teal and this one's black. It's the only difference. So anyway, I lost my deal.
You accidentally hit the remote and it went freaking out.
Oh man.
Skip several slides.
Got overexcited.
I guess I did. Hold up.
But we've seen your whole program. You guys caught
All right, is that where I was? All right.
Ready for the tour.
Anyway, it did come with the zoom eyepiece, and so all it needs is just a sturdy table, or even a sturdy chair so the kids can actually, because sometimes kids are just a little bit vertically challenged. So if you stick it on a chair, that's something that they can walk up to and do this with. This was actually during an event that I was having right in front of the library. Anyway, the Library Telescope, it has a potential of being in 26 to 52 households every single year. And so, depending on the library, they can have a 1 week or a 2 week loan period. And so most generally, they always have a 1 week period, but the Wichita Library has a 2 week loan period. And so with that being said, the loan program is up to the library's discretion, of course, and with each checkout, the average household will have about 4 or 5 people touching the telescope. So this is a multi-user telescope. Your telescope doesn't even get used half as much as this does in just 6 months. So, because there's a lot of people using this telescope. So this telescope needs to be the easiest telescope to use, to be able to set up, lightweight, durable, inexpensive, and that's why we chose this telescope for this program, just because of that. So it needs to be, make ready or, just place in view right away. Anyway, Mark Stowbridge, he's the guy that came up with this idea up there in New Hampshire. Have anybody heard of Mark Stowbridge? He's from the New Hampshire Astronomical Society, and how he got into this program, they were doing an event at a library telescope, at a library, and so the library donated $200 to them after they did their outreach event there at the library, and they said, well, what are we going to do with this $200? And Mark Stowbridge says, why don't we buy a telescope and give them a telescope, give it right back to them. So that's what they did, and this thing took off like gangbusters right after that. And so they actually bought a telescope, and they actually gave it to some Cub Scouts and say, all right, see how much damage you guys can do to it. And so that's what they did, what kind of modifications that they needed to do to make it come back in the same condition as it left. So the eyepiece is not removable and all this other stuff, and I'll get into that a little bit more here in a little bit. But there's over 600 libraries that are in this program in 45 states across the U.S., and there's only 5 states that are not in this, which is Hawaii, Delaware, let's see if I can remember this, Mississippi, North Dakota, and Nevada are not in the program for some reason. And a lot of it has to do with because they don't have a support group to get these library telescopes in the libraries, because it's usually an astronomy club that helps them with this. And of course, they can get into the program by themselves, but then they don't have a support group for them to do that with. Anyway, the library telescope is a perfect program for clubs just like yourselves to get involved with. And a single amateur astronomer like myself can actually do it myself, and that's how I started it. But if you've got the support of other club members, it really helps out a lot. And anyway, because it just started with me just doing this program all by myself by placing a couple of telescopes. And then when we put those telescopes at the Wichita Library, and I needed some help with it because it took several hours to get those telescopes all modified. And so I got 6 club members actually involved in it to help me out with it. And so like here's Paul, and there's Fred, and I know you don't know who this is. This is Ron, that's me. This is, you might know him, John Campbell.
Oh,
And then
I've seen him before.
this is Paul Bogart.
I really only know Fred.
Huh?
I only know Fred.
You only know Fred? Well, you know Paul. Okay, well, anyway, the modifications are key to make these telescopes a lot more durable. And anyway, the images here, it shows what the telescope looks like out of the box, and that's what these telescopes are, with the exception that the eyepiece is on here. And this one here has some of the modifications that I have put on, or that is put on. Let's see. So here are some of the modifications that we do. And I'm going to kind of look at my notes so I can remember all of them here. The eyepiece lens cap and the objective dust cover are tethered to the base of the telescope, so they don't get misplaced while during an observation session. And there's an off-axis 2-inch lunar portal that's cut into the dust cover to make a low-tech lunar filter. And it too is tethered to the cover. And the moon can be very bright, and it really stops down how much light enters the tube. And it works out really well, especially when you're looking at from like a first quarter to full moon. The red dot finder has been modified to either use double or AAA batteries instead of the button battery, because it's easier to replace. And if they leave the finder on and run the battery down, it's most likely that the user might have a battery to replace them with. And let's see, the zoom eyepiece is semi-permanently attached to it with 3 set screws. We take the thumb screws out of it and drill a 3rd hole to give it more contact to the barrel. And then there's some decals that are added to it. You can see some of them in the picture there, like don't look at the sun with it and stuff like that, like a moon map and stuff like that. The primary mirror has been modified to either protect it from curious little fingers, or modified to where you can't turn them at all by hand, but they have to have a tool to do that with. The Celestron Zoom eyepiece is a really high quality eyepiece for this here telescope. It goes from 8 millimeters to 24 millimeters, and it provides 19 times to 56 times power, which is fairly reasonable for an f4 telescope. There's no vignetting on this, or even aberrations on the Celestron eyepiece. Now there's an Orion eyepiece that they come out with, and it goes from 7 millimeters to 21 millimeters, and unfortunately it has a lot of vignetting in it, and you really notice it at night. You've got to have it in the center of it, in the field of view, to avoid that. So, but this one you can have it clear to the side, and it looks awesome throughout the thing. So I thought that was pretty neat. The eye cup, what we do is we tape the eye cup so it doesn't come off, and that gets lost a lot. And so you take some just electrical tape and just make just a length of it and just kind of put a tape on there. Try not to stretch it so it doesn't want to creep on you when it starts to shrink back up. Let's see, the focuser tube is also modified because with the heavier eyepiece, it's wobbly. This one has not been modified yet. So because it comes with those really small eyepieces, it's not high profile and it's not nearly as heavy. And so there's modifications in how you do that. It's got 3 little, almost like a Velcro type stuff in there. You take off the one that's on this end, and I just take it off and put a couple of pieces of duct tape on it. So duct tape can do just about anything, include stiffening up your focuser tube. And you put that back together, and it just stiffens it right up. And I've done part of it, but this one's much stiffer. So this one's been modified. Let's see, a 3rd hole has been tapped into the visual back. And this one has been done with the set screws. This one still has thumb screws in it. So you have 3 points of contact, and it uses set screw, so you have to have an Allen wrench to remove it with. And the Allen wrench comes into that little fanny pack, and it's zip tied shut, so the user can't get into it. So when you go to collimate it, that way you have access to all that stuff in there. So here are some of the basic details that are affixed to the tube. A solar viewing warning, and a moon map, and an eyepiece magnification chart, and a QR code to navigate, so you can navigate to the librarytelescope.org website. And all you got to do is just scan in that QR code, and you can do that with your smartphone, and you can get some instruction right there out in the middle of nowhere while you're using the little telescope around your backyard. So, and then you can also add your club telescope or your club sticker on there too somewhere. So here are 3 methods that you can keep curious fingers off of the collimator screws on there. So it's just a typical deal. So there's a cup that you can put over on the end of it. You take a 1 gallon pitcher, and you cannibalize it and cut off the last 3 inches of it, which is right at the bottom of the handle. And it's like a Rubbermaid type pitcher. And then you drill some new holes in there and slide it on there. And it works great, except when you go to collimate it, and you got to take it back off. And then try to line the holes back up. And that's the fun part, is trying to line the holes back up and get them back in there. So there's another modification where you take all this hardware off, and you drill out the hole that these screws, the stops are in, and make them just a slight bit bigger. And then you move the whole assembly over, so you take out the whole entire mirror and move the assembly over, because it's spring loaded, of course, and then put these lock nuts on them, and then you have a 8 millimeter nut driver to adjust it with. And I tell you what, it stays in collimation after that, because it doesn't move at all. The only thing you have problems with is the secondary, of course. And then another way of they did it is just put a label on it that says "Do not touch." And so some people say it actually works. So it's whatever you want to do and whatever you want to deal with. So all the ones that I had the cup on it, I went ahead and took them all off and put the non-traditional hardware on it. And I like it a lot better, because I think it looks better, more appealing, more aesthetics to it. And the collimation stays in. You don't have to recollimate it all the time. Well, here's the proper way that you can transport and carry the telescope, which is just kind of like if you're carrying a little toddler. And then it gives you a free hand where you can say, See what I got? I'm walking home with the telescope when you're leaving the library. And then you strap it into the car, just like a car seat, just like you show here in this picture. And it travels really, really well that way. You just have to be mindful of everything that sticks up out here. A lot of libraries kind of ask about putting it in a case, and I shoot it down every single time because the case, it actually causes more damage to the telescope than just leaving it just like this. It makes it more costly because you got to buy a case for it. It takes up more space, bigger footprint in your car when you're transporting it, when you're storing it. And then because the patron doesn't know how to be careful with it, and they just throw it into the case, and then all of a sudden things get broken in there. So we just say, just leave it just like this, and you'll do a lot better with it. So that's the easiest way to transport it. So it works great. Well, you can download this here document from the Astronomical League, and right here is where you can put your contact information on there. And this tells the librarians on who your contact person is. Who you want to go to is like probably, you'd start with the librarian if you know the librarian, the director or somebody in the library system, and contact with them, the person that holds the purse to it. And because you don't have to donate all your telescopes. Now you can have a fundraiser if you want, and if you know, to come up with some money to pay for a telescope so you could donate it to a telescope. But we have found, or I have found, that the telescope, the library has more respect for the telescope if they got some skin in the game, such as they pay for it. And if you give it to them for free, not so much. My very first telescope that I put out in the field, she just like, well, if it gets broke, Jerelyn will fix it. Well, no, Jerelyn will fix it, and I'll pay, and you're going to pay me for it, you know. So, and she did. And so there, you know, now she has a better respect for it because now she's got a little skin in the game. This telescope costs around $400. Of course, with COVID and the supply chain issues, they have gone up in price. And this includes the modifications and the zoom eyepiece. The zoom eyepiece used to be around $65. It's now around close to $100. You want to be careful where you find the telescope at. I found a really good deal on the internet, and it was and if it's a deal that's too good to be true, it probably is, because I got scammed, lost my money, but I reported it and I did get my money back. So anyway, so you have to be careful, but you can find both of these on Amazon. You can find the eyepiece on Amazon, and so then you have a better record of your equipment too. Let's see. Okay, here are some extra accessories that you can put on a telescope. So you've got a little fanny pack, and in the fanny pack you've got this little head flashlight, and it does a red and white light, which is neat. It's got two buttons on it. One's for white and one's for red. So you don't have to scroll through all the white lights to get to the one red light that's on there. And then you've got this little book. It's from the Audubon Society, and it's a constellation book, and it's got a really cool information in it about constellations, and it's just a little bitty pocket constellation book, and it has all 88 constellations in it, and so it's really good. And then of course this is the little manual that they come up with, and then you've got a little brush on this end and a little cleaner. And you might on the little brush you want to give that to the librarian and have them hide it in a drawer someplace. You don't want the patron messing with the eyepiece or anything like that. So if it gets dirty, you want to instruct them to have the librarian do it themselves. Yeah, Paul laughed at that too. The Astronomical League, they offer an observing program on the Library Telescope program, and you will be awarded a certificate and pin upon completion. And so there's a silver certificate, so it's a two-stage program. So the silver certificate is when you complete 20 hours and report it to the Astronomical League by filling out this really cool form, and it keeps a running total for you. And then you get the gold award, which you get a certificate and a pin, and when you complete that. And that's a total of 100 hours, so you do it an additional 80 hours to get the whole thing. And you think, don't be intimidated by the 100 hours, because you actually go through it pretty quick. Because if you set up a couple of telescopes at a couple of libraries, you've really invested a lot of time doing that. That includes the modifications and everything that goes with it. This is what the pen looks like. And so this is, so like I said, you don't want the 100 hours to be intimidating when you do this. Oh, and there's 21 awardees that have earned the silver certificate so far, and only 8 that have won the gold award so far. Well, before you know it, you will have accumulated 100 hours in this, and these are all the things that you could do that count towards it. And I even included like shopping, going to the hardware store and shopping for the hardware that you need to make the modifications, or surfing online, or making phone calls, or sending emails to everybody about it, or even talking to your club members. And if I didn't already have this award, this would count right here. This would count.
So I'm guessing you were the first award?
I got award number 10. But there's only 8 people that's gotten the gold, so there's 2 people that have gotten the silver before me, but don't have the gold. Go figure. But there's a lot of people, like I said, there's over 600 libraries that are involved in this program, so there's a lot of clubs that are in there. But of course, the award program came out well after a lot of these telescopes were installed in these libraries. And so you're going to have to go back, like, okay, in 2009 I did this, and so to try to remember all that. Well, the guy who is monitoring the award system, he just says, if you can kind of give me an estimate and kind of guesstimate and stuff like that, he goes, I'll give it to you, and stuff like that. But anyway, moving on. The Astronomical League has been giving away a free telescope. Every year they've been giving away a free telescope since 2015. And they've given away 10 telescopes every single year. And in 2018, they added the members at large. So they were giving away 10, 1 per region, and then they added a member at large. So now they're giving away 11 telescopes every single year. And so this is the entry form to do this. But when you do this, you're going to have to call the library who you want to give the library or the telescope to, if you win, to make sure that they're on board with it, because their name goes on this document right here. Why you want the telescope, and who you're going to give it to, and their complete contact information. So you want to make sure the library telescope, or is going to go to a home that the library is willing to take on this challenge. And so let's see. The first time I entered this contest was in 2019, and I won the telescope. And I placed it at the Silver Lake Library, and that was the first library in the state of Kansas that got a library telescope for their patrons. And they're doing pretty good. In fact, I just was there just last week, and I did maintenance on it, and I hardly had to do anything to it, and it cleaned up really nice, and somebody come in and checked it out right after I left. So let's see. Each winner of the telescope is encouraged to take photos when you do this. So when you donate it to a library telescope, or to a library, and then they want you to write a short article that's actually on the application form at the very bottom, that they want you to do that to send off for the Reflector magazine. And this is from the when I won the telescope at the for the Silver Lake Library, and this is the article that I put in the Reflector, and this came out in March of 2020, and I think it's on page 14. And then this one here is when I won 2 telescopes since I've been in this program. And the first telescope that I won was one of these. And the second telescope I won was one of these. So go figure. Anyway, and it went to the Douglas Library. They're down in Douglas. And I wrote an article for it, and it's right here. And it came out in this most recent March issue of the Reflector. And this is on page 12. So, just like I said in the first slide, currently Kansas has 26 telescopes at 14 different library locations in the state of Kansas, and they're all supported by the Kansas Astronomical Observers, And it sure would be a lot of fun if you guys were also involved in this program. And I think you'll find it's very rewarding when you do this. So anyway, does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Do the patrons that check out the libraries have to put a deposit down?
No, they do sign a checkout, like a checkout sheet, and they go over like, if you break it, you buy it type thing, and like this is $45 and stuff like that, and I give them like a generic type information as far as they can fill it out however they want it to, and I says you can change it to however you like it to read, depending upon what you want, out of it. And one library, the Wichita Library says, if you drop it on your foot, I'm not liable for breaking your toe. Or if kids are supposed to be supervised, because only adult can check it out. You have to be 18 years or older to check it out. And so if your little kid looks at the sun with it and they go blind, we're not responsible for it. So they put these little disclaimers in there. And so, no, they don't pay for the telescope unless they injure it in some way.
Do the libraries have any training program for the users, for the patrons?
They do, but a lot of times they're really understaffed. Now, when I go in there and modify them, I give them a training program, and so, this is what, for them, and then suggest ideas to do for the patrons. But because they just don't have the staff to give them a 15-minute or 20-minute tour, not so much. Now, like I said, they had a QR code that you can scan in with your smartphone, and it takes you to a website, and there's like a really neat little 10, 15-minute video that it says, this is how you use this telescope right here, and it walks you right through it. There's also, that I didn't bring with me, and I should have, there's some laminated sheets that I had come up with, and it's like 19 pages long, and I spiral bound it so you can be outside with it, and they tolerate the weather really well. And it's got some star maps in there, it's got a moon map in there, and it's got some other cool stuff that you could look at, because a lot of times if the moon isn't up and they check it out and they take it home, what the hell do I look at, And so we have these star charts, so they go through that. And then I encourage the librarians to take it home themselves. And then they have been doing that. They've been checking it out themselves. They're like the first on the list to check it out. And I says, because the best way to teach somebody on how to use it is if you know how to use it yourself. Yes, you had a question.
I'm curious, is there any data on like who is checking these out, if they're rechecking it out, what they're looking at, how much they're using when they check it out? Like, do we know what people actually do with these telescopes?
I can't hear you, I'm too far away.
Do we know what people actually do with the scopes? Records of
Oh,
what
you
they
mean like
look
feedback?
at?
Yeah.
Feedback? I've asked for feedback on it, and some libraries, it depends on if they have more hands-on with it. They do have some feedback on it, but not so much. What you ought to do, here's a deal. I was just on a webinar last week on the 16th of March with the library telescope program, and I invited Sarah Cottrell, and she's the director at the Wichita Library, and she talked about her library telescope program because it's been so successful, because she's got 118 people waiting for telescopes, and so it's just, it was a really good deal, and it's available on YouTube right now, so you can watch it. It's about 30 minutes long, and so she didn't have any really good feedback, because I asked her, I said, do you have any feedback from people who've checked it out? She goes, no, not directly. But I get a lot of people that come in, and after they've checked it out and they're checking it back in, they're putting themselves on the list again to check it out again. Does that answer your question?
I know one of the things that the St. Louis Club does fairly often, and they've given out hundreds of telescopes to libraries in the St. Louis area, is they'll have library telescope star parties that the public is invited to, and they'll start out the program inside, kind of showing them how to use it, and then let them actually use it outside, so that, in effect, it's a little bit of a training for the users as well.
And that's a perfect example, and I'll expand on that. And I call that the telescope petting zoo. And so I'll set it up with the libraries, especially the rural communities, and because they well, I don't want to get sidetracked, to try to get people to check out the telescope. And because people are intimidated by it, they're afraid to touch it. They're afraid if they touch it, they'll break it because they think this thing costs thousands of dollars. And I said, no, it's only about $400, $400. And so it's really not that expensive, and it's not that fragile. I says, you pick up a 6-month-old baby and you carry it on your hip. He's pretty rugged unless you throw him on the ground. And so anyway, but I do that, just like what Rick says, is that I'll have a daytime event. I'll start just before nightfall and have them come over. And these two are my telescopes, and I take them to outreach activities. And I let people touch them, let people learn how to use the finder, how to sight it in, how to use the zoom eyepiece, how to look at stuff, and do it in the daytime so they can see it. And so then all of a sudden the intimidation goes away. Because if you do it at night when it's dark, then the intimidation stays. They still don't get away from it. Because you want to encourage people to check it out. And that actually works. And every year we're going to start setting up to, we call it the International Library Telescope Observing Session. And that's in October timeframe. And it's close to where the International Observer Moon Night is. It's close to that. And it's working out really well. So I try to encourage libraries, especially the rural ones, to do that, have programs in-house, and then to encourage people to check it out. Because I found, now I found that rural libraries, the demographics there, people are more afraid of the telescope than people in a metro area. Because Wichita, it's a metro area, and like I said, there's 118 people on hold, whereas you go to a rural community and they're like, oh, I don't know about touching it. It's really amazing on the difference on how people look at the telescope.
And the skies in the rural area, the skies are so much better.
I know, see, that's my line of thinking too, but still they don't know what to look at. Even if they have it sitting in front of them, they don't know what to look at. And that's why I provide star maps and give them a list of things that are fun to look at. This thing looks, M42 looks awesome in here. It's amazing. It splits the trapezium. You can see all, 4 of the stars in there. So it's just a little F4. So
I think her question was really good, and I'm not sure where you were going with it about the survey, but what we should do, or perhaps this is something to put in the back of your mind, is get with the library, see if they will, you or somebody else, name some people, and then give them an online survey to try and get some feedback of what they thought about the program and all that. Maybe even dangle.
Survey monkey.
Yeah, exactly. Or dangle some little prize there for them.
Right.
And
I have suggested this, but I still don't get any feedback from the library who doesn't get feedback from the patron who uses it.
well, I know that they're going to be, especially with some of the politics we've been going through here recently, going to be a little hesitant of releasing people's names. Libraries have always been traditionally very confidential information there.
Right. Now I went down to Wellington. That's my alma mater, and many of the people that work at the library I went to school with, and it just blows my mind. Oh, all these little old ladies. Oh my God, I am that little old lady. And so because all these women I've gone to school with, they were my former classmates. But I tried to sell them on the idea of putting a telescope there. I thought it'd be kind of fun to put a telescope where I used to live, where I went to school. And they don't want it. They're afraid that it'll go out the door and it'll never come back. And I says, well, you have the discretion on who you can loan your telescope to. Just because they walk in the door and says, I want to borrow your telescope, well, they have to be in good standing with the telescope. And if they've got a bill of $150 because they haven't returned books, don't let them borrow the telescope.
Although in that,
Most libraries are doing away with fines now.
Yes, they are. Now the Wichita Library, if you watch that YouTube video, she goes, yeah, I don't have any problems charging them for $400 if they lose my telescope.
But even with all the activity they've had, she said they've never once had a telescope go out that didn't come back.
Right.
Knock
Now,
on
there's
wood.
another YouTube video, and it was about another metro area. It was in Salt Lake City, or Salt Lake County in Utah. And they've got 30 some of these telescopes. And out of all, they've been in the program for 5 years. And out of the 5 years, out of all those telescopes, only one telescope has not come back. One. Which I think is pretty good, if you think about it. Any other questions?
I know when our club used to loan out telescopes, I guess we do again now, that, you know, it's to club members, so it's different from loaning to the general public. And those scopes lasted years, you know, of use. Do you have any notion of the life expectancy of these in this kind of program?
I don't really have an answer to that. Like I said, I've been in the program only since 2019, and I got involved with the task force just a couple of years ago, like in 2020, actually. I was invited to join them. And so I don't really know how long they've been doing that, but like Mark Stobridge, he introduced the program in 2008, and I don't know how many of the telescopes that he first introduced are still, you know, usable. So I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. But in Utah at that one library, they've been in the program for 5 years, and they're all still going strong. And they were one of the I think at the observatory. They had a backlog of people waiting on the waiting list too for telescopes, and I guess they were going to receive a donation of 18 telescopes from the local observatory. Any others? Well, what I do with these two telescopes, like I said, I take these two outreach activities, you know, and I set them on a table, and, you know, I have my other telescope that I use, you know, and I let people, you know, touch this telescope and learn how to use it themselves, you know, and I says, you know, if you go into this library, you can check it out.
So you're just putting the Allen in there, so you're not like going into the eyepiece barrel or anything? You're just-
No, you just loosen up the set screws and it pops right out.
I was curious.
Yeah, I haven't done that one yet. I do have well, actually, one of these, let's see, one of these is, this is from Astromania. This is an Astromania eyepiece. And it's exactly the same as this. So it's actually a Celestron zoom eyepiece with Astromania on it. And it's $55, and this one's $100.
I'm betting it's actually the other way around. The Celestron's rebranded a cheaper eyepiece.
But it's really, this eyepiece is just the same as that one. I've tested them out in the night sky.
Interesting.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you, Jerelyn.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you coming out. And it's still a little light out, but I think it's supposed to be clear. So we'll get some telescopes set up, and as soon as it gets dark, we'll be able to observe.
Oh, I wanted to share this with you. I printed out a couple of these so you could read them if you want to.